Here's the start and get... Promises to Shara. Winds up that right hand.
Archbishop of basketball, goal! He hung on that net like a stalk up a tree. NTA Sports 20.
Enhance the existing cordial relations between us in the interest of our peoples and countries.
President Buhari receives 4 new ambassadors posted to Nigeria.
Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki takes oath for a second term in office.
We will grow our social sector by constantly improving our education, healthcare system, provision of social security and safety nets.
Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 worried over disregard for COVID-19 protocols in public places.
And the vaccine is just to wear my mask and maintain social distancing. Let's use what we have.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on the management of diabetes.
Now, let's recall events of August 6, 1945, when little boy and father Otis were sent to 2 Japanese towns of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the Allies. The bombing of those Japanese cities during the Second World War in 1945 is recorded as the event that killed the most humans in world history. Fortunately, intervention from world powers and the international community have prevented such human devastation.
Well, Nadabo, they say that an individual is his own worst enemy would indicate that even in the absence of war, people themselves can also be the architects of their own calamities. Now, millions of people are dying from health conditions that ordinarily are preventable. For instance, dietitians and nutritionists warn of the consequences of certain lifestyles to healthy living.
Well, Kingsley, to amplify the concerns you raised, Noah Yuval, an Israeli historian, says that statistically, more people died from obesity in 2017 than from any violence. He warns that sugar is a greater danger than gunpowder. You have a greater chance of killing yourself than any soldier or a terrorist, and that's a quote.
That's right. Indeed, sugar is associated with increased risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes. Now, sugar, when you have that, it tends to raise your blood sugar level. That's after an intake of certain kinds of foods and drinks. Now, diabetes experts say it's not just the white rice you consume, but also the high-fat-laden food that could also spike one's blood sugar level.
And the obesity is considered, as the adult onset of diabetes, and is now referred to as type 2 diabetes because of its frequency in children. The American Medical Association estimates that 2 in 5 children are at risk of developing diabetes, and this generation of children is also at risk of degenerating to shorter life expectancy than their predecessors.
Now, diabetes mellitus is a chronic, debilitating, and expensive disease. The global burden is said to be increasing. The sufferers were nearing some 400 million by 2013 and a projected number of almost 600 million by year 2035. Statistics indicate that Nigeria has the highest prevalent rate in sub-Saharan Africa, with almost 4 million people living with the condition, and that accounts for 5% of the adult population in the sub-region. Of course, we know that Nigeria is also the most populous country on the African continent. The question, however, is whether diabetes can be cured or can high blood sugar levels be reversed.
Well, Kingsley, the social media is replete with a number of what is called breakthrough solutions that claim to have the propensity of curbing diabetes. But diabetes experts will tell you that there is no cure for type 2 diabetes, even though they encourage diet changes and diet changes, that is, and weight loss to induce sugar remission and delay development of complications. To achieve this, however, they will require some professional help.
You're right, Nadabu. Now, nurses are often the first point of contact for patients before referrals are made. Now, the roles of nurses and responsibilities include, but not limited to, counseling of patients, giving prevention advice, using behavior change and health coaching techniques, screening and early detection, plus, of course, monitoring of urine and blood glucose levels, oral and injectable therapies. Now, patients who have diabetes specifically will require a lot of self-management skills, which the nursing staff would provide for them to, of course, continue to manage the diabetes.
And of course, Kingsley, there is no doubt that nurses provide outstanding support for patients with different health concerns. But as the global burden of diabetes mellitus continues to increase, the role of nurses and other health professionals in managing the impact of the condition becomes very glaring. Little wonder that this year's World Diabetes Day is recognizing the contribution of nurses in mitigating the diabetes burden and focusing attention on how nurses can make a difference. That will be the first of our conversation this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. I am Yusuf Narabusuman. Thank you for joining us.
And just to indicate also that 1 in 10 persons live with diabetes, while 1 in 2 persons with diabetes don't even know that they have it. So education is key. And on World Diabetes Day, all critical players and key advocates of healthy living unite to raise awareness about the condition. As Nadabo stated earlier, the campaign this year aims at raising awareness of the crucial role that nurses play in supporting people with diabetes. So, in our program today, we shall, of course, be taking a look at that particular role and see what happens, going just beyond the condition and the circumstances of the management of the disease. So, on that note again, we'd like to welcome you. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And just a reminder of the complementary part of the program. In a moment, we will join our colleague, Chimobi Oltanaji, for the morning news. Business news will follow thereafter, much later in the program. Bayo Atorebe will join us for the newspaper review. So let's get started with the morning news. Chimobi.
Hello, good morning, Yusuf and Kingsley. Here is the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari says the survival of humanity depends largely on how well the international community can effectively collaborate and cooperate to its attaining goals set for global peace and economic prosperity. The president stated this while addressing 4 new ambassadors posted to Nigeria on tour of duty by their respective countries.
Relations with your respective countries and has collaborated at the multilateral level to achieve targets set by several international conventions and treaties established by our respective nations. We need to enhance the existing cordial relations between us in the interest of our peoples and countries. Nigeria is ready to pursue broader dialogue, as well as enhanced cooperation and collaboration on the basis of constructive mutual respect and a shared vision for our future.
I would like also to tell you that we are at your disposal in order to go ahead, to strengthen, to narrow our bilateral ties, not only in the economic and commercial fields, but also in the political and cultural field.
And as part of measures to attract foreign investors, the federal government is promoting the adoption of alternative dispute resolution and creating the necessary infrastructure which will enhance the speedy resolution of business-related disputes. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo disclosed this during a virtual interaction with members of the French Business Confederation, an event that also featured representatives of several top French companies and officials from both governments in Nigeria and France. The Vice President noted that companies would rather resolve their disputes through commercial arbitration, an area he said government is looking to explore in greater details, and advised that alternative dispute resolutions such as arbitration and mediation should always be in contrast on businesses. The Vice President explained that the efforts made by the administration across diverse areas of creating a conducive business environment is yielding results. On investment of government in the education and health sectors, the Vice President said the federal government, in collaboration with state governments, is encouraging best practices. Now, Nigeria's progress in containing the COVID-19 pandemic should not be an excuse for citizens to let down their guards. Chairman of the Presidential Task Force of COVID-19, Boss Mustafa, says noticeable disregard for COVID-19 protocols in places of worship and other mass gatherings is not only worrisome but dangerous, while a vaccine is still being awaited.
By the time the world decides that 20% will go to the most vulnerable, you know that you and I don't fall into that category. I already have the vaccine, and the vaccine is just to wear my mask and maintain social distancing. Let's use what we have.
I can assure you, sir, and this gathering, that so far, in line with the protocol, all the core members were given appointment, and except you have to come on the day given to you, you are not going to be attended to because we want to avoid overcrowding and so on.
Now, since suspected hoodlums dealt a hard blow on NTA Calabar, the station has been struggling to pick its bits and pieces. Rather than living in despair, there is now a ray of hope with assurances that the station will be back on air in 6 weeks. This assurance is coming from the Director General, Nigeria Television Authority, Yakubu Ibn Muhammad, during his on-the-spot assessment of the damages caused by the mayhem.
We should not be deterred by what happened. We should see it as a temporary setback. It should spur us to want to do more in the service of NTA Calabar.
Actually signifies hope. It means that we are not alone. We have a reliable and responsive father.
And Governor Godwin Obaseki has pledged to develop the state and make it the most secure emerging commercial hub in the country. This is contained in his inauguration speech delivered shortly after he took the oath of office for a second term in office in Edo State.
My re-election represents a new hope. I see myself as a vessel in the redefinition of democracy in Nigeria, and I am not unaware that this places enormous responsibilities on me. We will grow our social sector by constantly improving our education, healthcare system, provision of social security and safety nets, and caring for the vulnerable and the disadvantaged in our state.
All right, and that's the morning news. The program continues with Nadebo and Kingsley just after the break. Stay with us.
Global trends in telecommunications development of 5G. The Nigerian Communications Commission in November 2019 embarked on a proof of concept with MTN in 6 locations. Relevant stakeholders, including members of security agencies, were involved in the trial. The commission considered that the development of the 5th generation technology will be beneficial for socio-economic development of Nigeria and will consequently promote the national digital economy for a digital Nigeria that will improve the way Nigerians live and work. In view of the successful completion of the trial and a directive from the Honorable Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, the Commission commenced the development of a policy for the deployment of 5G in Nigeria. The Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy, Office of the National Security Advisor, National Assembly, Ministry of Health, National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency, Association of Licensed Telecommunications Operators of Nigeria are among the stakeholders that will make input into this policy. Details on NCC's website. 5G will not be deployed in Nigeria until the policy is concluded and approved.
Professor Umar Garba Dambata, Executive Vice Chairman, Chief Executive, Nigerian Communications Commission, announcer.
A scorecard like no other. Government has put in place measures and initiatives principally targeted at youths, women, and the most vulnerable groups in our society. These included broad plan to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. The creation of 75 billion naira National Youth Investment Fund to provide opportunities for the youths and the Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Survivor Fund, through which government is A. Paying 3-month salaries of the staff of 100,000 micro, small and medium enterprises. B. Paying for the registration of 250,000 businesses at the Corporate Affairs Commission. C. Giving a grant of 30,000 naira to 100,000 artisans and guaranteeing market for the product of traders. These are in addition to many other initiatives such as farmer money, trader money, market money, N-Power, N-Tech, and N-Agro. These and more in spite of a recession and a global pandemic.
Do you know that social media is not good or bad, and that it is you who is using it that is either good or bad? Bad social media users spread rumors and fake news without verification. But good social media users stop, verify the information, and reflect before sharing it. Now, are you a good social media user? Stop the spread of fake news. Verify the authenticity of your source for a better Nigeria.
This message is from the National Orientation Agency. The Council of Our Fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's time for business news, and here is our correspondent, Ronami Egirani.
The current value of Nigeria's infrastructure is 35% of its GDP, a very low figure when compared to the 70% economies of the same size spend on infrastructure. Adekunle Oyinloye, CEO of the Infrastructure Bank, revealed this at a stockbrokers conference, stating that Nigeria would need $15 billion annually for the next half-decade to finance its infrastructure deficit. He, however, also noted that depending on public resources alone as a solution will cripple the economy even more. Dr. Emeka Okengu, a development economist, talks about alternative ways to finance Nigeria's infrastructure deficits.
So there are a lot of models for infrastructure. So it's not about the money. The money shouldn't scare you. I mean, government does not need to mint 15 billion to be able to make roads. If you also make roads and tow them, okay, as long as you have the human traffic and the load value, way bridges and all that, against that traffic on that road, you can actually borrow money, okay, or get into a PPP, if you may, to be able to develop the infrastructure.
Now let's take a look at how the stock market performed on Thursday, the 12th of November, 2020. With business news, I'm Ronami Egirani.
Oh, many thanks, Ronami. Next on Good Morning Nigeria is the newspaper review.
Newspaper reviewer Bayo Atebe is with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Yusuf.
Good morning, Bayo.
Good morning, Nigeria.
Yusuf, we'll begin with you.
Go ahead.
I said we'll begin with you.
No, let's get started with you.
Begin with you. All right, let's take a look at the window page of the Nation newspaper. And some sad story there coming out of Accra, Ghana. Africa will miss Rawlings, say Buhari and Akufo-Addo. Ex-Ghanaian president dies at 73. Details of that can be found on page 8. And Chev Xmas home trip. PTF advises Nigerians, let's stop COVID-19 spread. That's the rider to that. Dad fed us from his pocket as Kaduna governor. And that's a reference to the late Barabe Musa, the first civilian governor of Old Kaduna State. It is on page 6. Below the nameplate, Boni sends 107 billion naira budget estimate to House. And Bello seeks approval for 151.24 billion naira. Those are state budgets, one for Yobe, the other for Kogi. Stock exchange, horse trading as equities rally 1.1 trillion naira in 3 hours. And 753 Nigerian traders beg for evacuation from Ghana. Our lives under threat, businesses shut, and federal government to address complaints. Those are 2 riders to that. And there is also a quote extracted from the story on the front page. It says, imagine our businesses being under lock and key for several months by Ghanaian authorities. Some traders who borrowed money from banks to transact businesses cannot pay back, and some goods are getting expired. Ex-governor opened 2,537 bank accounts and 1.48 billion naira found in dormant 860 accounts. That's page 8. Nadabo, Did you read that? Or did you hear that?
I did quite a
bit. These are court procedures. 2,537. How do you keep track of those accounts?
And then 860 accounts?
Yeah. Dormant,
really. Dumbfounding, really.
Yes.
Let's continue.
I don't know. The last one is doctor charged with raping married patient and Matawali signs 4 bills. Page 27.
That was a teacher yesterday, abducting or rather kidnapping.
Yeah, that's a couple of days ago.
And today,
abducting his own pupil and then asking for 200,000 naira ransom.
Ransom.
Well, this one, 2,537 bank accounts. There's some special skill to do that.
It does, really. I'm just short of words.
Yeah.
Let's look at the Daily Trust and then see what's therein. We have right under the masthead. Federal government worried over mental health of COVID-19 survivors. You get that story on page 6. And the ex-Ghanaian President Rawlings dies of coronavirus. That's one other death too many. You get that story on page 9. And Dangote to begin fertilizer sales this month. On page 20, you can get the details of that. At the bottom of Daily Trust, you have APC backs Sanwo-Olu on repeal of ex-governor's pension law. Go to page 36 for details. On page 9, there's a story on Lassa fever that kills 233 Nigerians in 10 months. On page 10 of the Daily Trust, a story on TSA is there, and Gombe recovers 1.48 billion naira from 256 secret accounts. That's another big one there. The big story, or the lead story here on Daily Trust is titled Harassment. Federal government moves evacuating Nigerian traders from Ghana. And the riders are shop sealed for over a year. Relevant MDS to facilitate return, then bringing them back, not the best option, says an expert. The story is on page 4. That's the lead story on Daily Trust. Bayo?
Well, let's start with the comments that have come as regards the death of former Ghanaian leader, Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. He died at Kolebu Teaching Hospital, Accra, yesterday. He was age 73. President Muhammadu Buhari has said that Africa will miss Jerry Rawlings, while the Ghanaian president, Nana Akufo-Addo, says a great tree has fallen and Ghana is poorer for the loss. Lieutenant General Jerry Rawlings first came into prominence when in 1979 he staged a coup and ruled for 112 days. During that period, in a process he called a purge, he arrested and executed 8 military officers on complicity of corruption, which included 3 heads of states, Generals Afrifa, Achampon, and Akufo. He came back again in a second coup, and by the time he handed over, he came back and contested election and won election for presidency and served for 2 terms. He died after attending the burial ceremony of his mother about some 20 days ago, and there are speculations that apparently he contracted the COVID-19 from that. The mother is Ghanaian. His father is a Scottish pharmacist, Ramsay John. But you know, Ghana, they are matrilineal. So they say you cannot, here we are patrilineal. Yeah. We inherit on the father's side. But there they say you can dispute the father of a child, but you cannot dispute the mother of a child. So inheritance on their line is matrilineal. So that's why he's Ghanaian. He's Ghanaian. It's worrying, the story that is coming from Ghana about our competitors who are traders in that country. You recall that for the past 2.5 months, that story has trended. The minister in charge of trade in Nigeria and the Ghanaian counterpart had met. The minister of foreign affairs had also interceded. In fact, President Muhammadu Buhari had discussed the same with President Nana Akufo-Addo. But one is worried that apparently a solution has not been found.
Yeah, Bayo, just to clarify the story on the opening and management of 2,537 bank accounts. Now, on page 8 of the Nation newspaper, there's an allegation being made by the governor of Gombe State, that is Inuwa Yahaya, and he was saying that at the opening of a one-day workshop on TSA, that's a Treasury Single Account, claiming that the former administration had these accounts, not that they were personal accounts, but that they were different accounts of the state government, and that they have had to streamline it and then discover some of the accounts were also dormant. So it's not from court proceedings, that it was an allegation made by the incumbent governor as to how the previous administration operated those accounts. Some of the accounts, according to the governor, were not disclosed, apparently. But if he had his handover notes, I'm sure those things would have been discovered there. Yes.
Well, Governor Godwin Obaseki has been inaugurated for his second term, saying it is an opportunity to bridge the gap between the challenge of the past and the promising future that holds for Edo State. He called on all to shelve the past challenges of inequality, injustice, underdevelopment, and poverty, and all should join hands to lift and give Edo the determination to move Edo forward. He says that as kith and kin, we should stop looking at the past and take our destiny in our own hands. Also at Ogbe Stadium, where that ceremony took place yesterday, the Nigerian Super Eagles will be taking on the Leon Stars today. This is a qualifying match in the African Cup of Nations series. The Super Eagles now have a blend of experienced players as well as youthful ones. And Coach Gene Rod says that the match will be tough because many people might think that Sierra Leone is a minion And he makes a reference to the match between Nigeria and Seychelles in Asaba, which gave us a tough time. But he says we have to win this because it's a competition match. It's not like the friendlies we played this last month.
There are no underdogs now in football.
Yes.
Absolutely.
If you underrate anybody, you do it at your own peril.
Unfortunately, you're not going to have spectators at the stadium
Yes.
on account of
Again,
COVID-19. But they say the match will be shown live.
It will be watched virtually across the nation.
We're shown live.
Yes.
Yes. That's if it's
live. It's virtual.
Well,
Yeah, all
but the stadium thing is the most important.
Yes.
Even the chairs and the encouragement being given by the fans. Well,
don't worry, because since the advent of COVID-19, players are used to playing in an empty stadium across the world. It's a new normal.
All right, Bayo, let's take a look at the editorial from the Punch newspaper. It says, making presidential mass metering initiative work. And the editorial, in part, says that under the presidential mass metering initiative, the government is making funds available for discos to roll out 1 million meters in the first phase at no cost to consumers. But the editorial adds that the meter distribution should be effectively monitored by NEC, that is the electricity regulator, to protect it from individuals bent on sustaining sleaze in the sector.
Well, the concern about metering and electricity has been a matter of concern. In fact, 2 days ago, incidentally, we couldn't take a look at it. It was the subject of editorial for the nation, and we were scheduled to look at it. But the whole crux is about the federal government plan to provide 6 million meters for the nation. Currently, from the population we have, Nigeria has 10.47 consumers. The metering level is about 4.23 million, and therefore there is a shortfall of 6.24 million. And federal government in its latest program is to provide 6 million meters. So that will go a long way in ensuring that everybody is metered. So one of the targets is to eliminate estimated building for which consumers are being done in. And what the editorial is happening on is that this is a very good initiative because they are to source the meters from local manufacturers. It will create an avenue for mass employment and will be a redeem for our mass unemployment situation. But they are challenging the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission to assert itself and regulate properly. And they are also calling for Nigerian labor as well as civil society organizations to monitor the metering. The metering has started from Lagos, Kaduna, and Lagos, but subsequently it will go across all the discos around the nation.
And that is a good step in the right direction. And I think the federal government is trying to tackle the power issue and trying to get the records straight. It's the normal all over the place. It's only maybe in Nigeria and some few other countries that this metering is becoming a problem, but all over, even water meters are there too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but there's also an attitude with our attitude. We tend to think that everything that belongs to government, from the days of ECN to NEPA to power holding, it belongs to government and it belongs to nobody and we can take it free. Most people connect power illegally.
Well, thank you so much.
Getting a meter now, we hope it will not be as arduous as it had been for some years. If the meters are being rolled out, let them be available. Because sometimes the meters were being hoarded.
Yes.
And then the customer, of course, obviously got cheated through the estimated billing.
I think with this initiative, the federal government is going to break that. Once it's going to be free, to a great extent, people will not hoard it.
Yes.
And I think I go a long way in trying to reduce all these illegal connections. Thank you so very much, Bayo. We thank you so much for being part of this program today,
thank you,
this morning. And then we look forward to see you on Monday again.
Thank you.
We wish you a very happy weekend. This Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you from the Nigerian Television Authority. We shall now take a break. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
You are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, where we're live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. To kickstart our conversation, which is on the management of diabetes, let's listen into this background report by our correspondent, Abdusalam Jibril.
Diabetes mellitus is an incurable, non-communicable disease afflicting people of all races, ages, and sex, posing major public health and socio-economic challenges. According to a 2010 declaration by former United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, diabetes is a public health emergency in slow motion. Experts describe diabetes mellitus as a metabolic disorder that causes high blood sugar. It is a chronic disease that occurs either when the pancreas does not produce enough insulin or when the body cannot effectively use the insulin it produces. Its symptoms include frequent urinating, extreme fatigue, blurry vision, cuts or bruises that are slow to heal, weight loss, among others. In Nigeria, diabetes mellitus was previously considered to be rare. However, its prevalence is on the increase, and medical practitioners say this is mainly because of urbanization and changes in lifestyle, especially food consumption. Data from the International Diabetes Federation shows that there are more than 1.5 million cases of diabetes in Nigeria, and by 2040, this figure will be more than double. The World Health Organization states that while non-communicable diseases account for 29% of deaths in Nigeria, cardiovascular diseases, cancers, chronic respiratory diseases, and diabetes were the primary cause of deaths from non-communicable diseases in 2019.
According to what people are saying, it normally causes by starch foods. All these energy, fufu and the rest, will be taken, if you are taking them too much, and without doing exercise, it will cause diabetes.
Make sure we eat a balanced diet. Make sure we balance our food with vitamins, but I would say fruits should be the topmost priority of anybody who wants to stay away from diabetes.
They need to sensitize the Nigerian public what to do what to do to avoid diabetes. If there is enough sensitization in the school, on radio, on television, I guess people will follow.
With issues of health awareness, superstition, poverty, lack of health statistics, and adequate healthcare facilities, how can diabetes be effectively managed? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will be providing answers shortly.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you from the studios of the Nigerian Television Authority. Our topic this morning is managing diabetes. And to discuss this topic, first I would like to welcome Felicia Anuma, Professor of Medicine and Endocrinology, Dean also, Faculty of Clinical Sciences, University of Abuja, and she is also the President, Diabetic Foot Nigeria Initiative. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
for inviting me.
Thank you very much. We also have here in the studio Dr. Goodness Chidi Anyau, community nutritionist, and she's the first and immediate past president of Nutrition Society of Nigeria, FCT chapter. Welcome to the program.
Very much. Thanks for having me.
Okay, now two other guests we're also having this morning. We'd like to welcome Haruna Mandabs. He's a nurse and also National Auditor of the National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives. Haruna, delighted to have you with us on the program.
Good morning and thank you.
And last but not the least, in the meantime, we would like to welcome Peter Agada. Peter Agada is an architect, pastor, and a person living with diabetes. And he is said to be a patient being managed by Professor Felicia Anuma, who's right here with us in the studios. Architect Agada, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, well diabetes, our background gave some indication a moment ago what diabetes is all about. We can't, of course, discuss the current issues around diabetes without first having an understanding of what diabetes is and what the risk factors are that will predispose an individual to diabetes. Let's begin with Professor Felicia Anuma.
Thank you very much. In simple terms, diabetes is a clinical condition where the body loses the ability to utilize glucose properly. Put in simple terms, that's what it is. The body loses the ability to utilize glucose.
What does glucose do to the body or for the body?
Well, glucose is a source of energy and nutrition for the body. The cells of the body, they need nutrients. For us to be active, to do what we have to do, we have to have energy. Glucose is burnt inside the cell as a source of energy for us to use.
So when the body doesn't, utilize glucose, ultimately one loses the capability to be energetic and weak and the rest of them.
You are right, because it means the cell is starving. And when we are starving, how we feel. We can't do our activities as usual.
So what factors can trigger that?
There are many risk factors for diabetes. By the way, we have different types of diabetes. We have what we call the type 1 that occurs in young people, and then we have type 2 that occurs in older people. But 90 to 95% of cases of diabetes is type 2 diabetes, the one that occurs in older people. So we will look at that. And we have many risk factors. Aging is a risk factor because as we age, there are metabolic changes that naturally occur in our body that will tilt us towards the disease side of the spectrum of life. That's the natural way. So as we age, blood sugar tends to rise. As we age, blood pressure tends to rise. As we age, even the cells tend to misbehave, and then, the issue of cancer comes. So aging is a risk factor for, diabetes. Another risk factor is weight, excess weight. I'm always saying that God is a perfect scientist. For every height, there is an ideal weight. That's the way God made us. So when we allow our weight to get beyond what that height is meant to carry, then we are looking for trouble. Blood sugar will come, blood pressure will rise and so on. And then diet is another critical risk factor. In the urban setup, what we did is we civilized everything around us, including our diet. So we began to acquire the diseases of civilization because we left our African or Nigerian not healthy diet for the civilized diet, because these diets, they are full of a lot of bad fat, a lot of sugar, a lot of salt. So we tend to, acquire these diseases more in the urban setup than in the rural setup. And another thing is physical inactivity. In Nigeria, once we are getting affluent, we stop being active because we now have a lot of people around us that is lifting our hands, lifting our legs. We no longer move. Even to carry our bags, somebody helps us. So we take a lot of calorie in and we burn nothing out. So we have an imbalance, which is fat, that will, tilt us towards having diabetes, hypertension, and so on.
We have a patient in this house, and I think he can throw more lights on, or rather ascertain and confirm these things you're saying, getting the information firsthand. You've heard what your doctor said, because you are, outpatient. How did it start? How did you feel? What took you to her?
All right, thank you so much. How did it start? Well, initially I noticed certain changes in the way my whole body behaves. First of all, I began to urinate a bit more frequently than normal. I will wake up, say, 5-6 times in the night to go and pass urine, and it was it was happening all of the time, and it was getting worrisome. Then I noticed that I was losing weight so much, and then I also noticed I was drinking a lot of water. But the one that got me scared is one day I was watching something on the television, and they said if you pass urine and you come back there after a couple of hours and you notice that some ants are around it, they know that there's a problem. And the day I mistakenly ran into that, I said, no, I have to see a doctor immediately. I began to look for a doctor. That was a long time ago. This is over 22 years ago.
Okay.
My meeting with Dr. Numa was recent. I've been managing it the way I knew best, but that best was not good enough. And then this situation translated to other complications. I began to notice palpitations. My heart will be beating, So I went to look for somebody to tell me about the heart situation. And then the person recommended me to meet Prof. I went to see Prof, and she asked 1, 2, 3 questions and said, this is your situation. So with Prof, one interesting thing she said to me when I met her is that, you have to assist us. You are now 50% a doctor and 50% a patient. And then she tried to teach us what to do about dieting, the kind of food to eat. In fact, she gave she took a piece of paper and drew on it and said, if this paper, this round circle you are seeing is 100% of your diet, from the top to the bottom, she said, 50% of your food from here to here should be vegetables. Then she drew another line across the middle, almost like drawing a pie chart. Here, protein, here, carb. So dieting is very, very critical. Very, very critical. Vegetables, your carb and all other things measured properly. In fact, I'm even going further to understanding the amount of carbs in what I put in my mouth now. Carb counting. Very, very critical. And then exercise. Any day I do not have my protocol of exercise, 1 hour at least of rigorous exercise every day, either in the mornings or in the evenings. When I do my test, I'm coming to the next item now, testing. You must live with the science of your body. You must understand your body sciences, your body vitals. I have 2 machines in my house. One of them tests the glucose in my blood. It's called glucometer. The other one tests my blood pressure. I do those twice in a day. Sometimes I do it every day, sometimes I don't. But I understand my body science right now. I can tell you, the way I'm feeling now is like my sugar is high, or the way I'm feeling now is like my sugar is low. I'm not perfect yet. I still keep my contact with my doctor as much as possible. Even when I'm feeling well, I call her, I send her text. I look for her, if I need to look for her. She's a doctor and she's also a partner in my existence right now. And I think that is what everybody should do. I've managed this for 22 years. I'm feeling well by the grace of God. Ultimately, God is also the final. He's the one that tells you, this is the time to go and do this is the time to go and do that. It's in your inside. So basically, this is how I've lived the last 22 years or so that I've been managing it.
Well, just to clarify for our viewers, you say you have 2 machines at home, the glucometer and the blood pressure monitor. These are actually very portable items. Could you explain that to her? So that the items you can actually put in your pocket so that they don't start thinking that it's some big machine that you find in the factory.
Oh, yes, yes. Thank you so much, sir. I call them machines because they operate automatically. They are little. They are portable. The glucometer is very little you can put in your pocket. It has a prick, and then you take the blood, and then you have a strip that you put inside it. It gives you readings. With time, you will understand the readings that are safe or not safe. In fact, with my doctor, what I do. I even understand the kind of readings that I should have 2 hours after meal. Okay? 6 hours after meal. You know, the kind of readings you should have first in the morning or late in the evening. There are readings that are considered safe or not safe. Very little machine like that. You know, it's called a glucometer. And then I have a BP monitor. You just wear it like a wristwatch. In fact, this wristwatch that I wear, they had to tell me to stop believing it. It's also a blood pressure monitor of some kind. Some of them, they now come in the level of something like a wristwatch. You put it up, and then it tells you this is your blood pressure. It tells you your blood count per minute. It tells you the systole and the diastole. Okay, and all of these have ranges that you must manage. So it is a life of understanding the science of your body, the vital signs of your body. You must be on tap with the vital signs of your body. Very, very critical. And you must keep contact with your doctor, whether you feel well or you don't feel well. It's critical. The doctor becomes a part of your everyday, an integral part of your life.
Professor Felicia, let's establish the real premise for this discussion. Therefore, diabetes is one word, but there are so many types of it, I believe, maybe two basically. We want to shed more light on these two so that we can now see where does pastor fit in and where do other people fit in?
Okay. The type 1 diabetes, like I said, it occurs in younger people, and there is a genetic predisposition to this. Yeah.
Right.
And then there are environmental factors that now, decide whether this individual who has a genetic predisposition is going to express the disease or not, like viral infections. Type 2 diabetes, like I said, is the most common type of diabetes. More than 90% of cases of diabetes that you hear is type 2 diabetes. And I was mentioning the risk factors that what predisposes an individual to type 2 diabetes. Something I didn't mention was family history. Family history is so important for people to know, because if you have one parent with diabetes, any of the children of that parent, they have a 40% chance of developing diabetes at any stage of their lifetime. If two parents have, there is as much as 70% chance. Wow. And if a brother or a sister has, there is also a 40% chance. But I try to let patients know that they owe their relations a responsibility. Because if you know, in Nigeria, we don't like the next person to know that we have this problem. But I tell them they owe their relations a responsibility, because if one brother has diabetes and you let the others know, then they can get well informed, live right, and not have it. If you have a 40% chance of having a disease, God has left 60% in your hands to get well informed, live right, and not have it. So I'm always trying to encourage. And then I tell parents who have diabetes, they have a responsibility towards their children. They must ensure that their children don't get into that 40% of having the disease.
Do the risk factors apply to both types of diabetes?
No,
Right.
They don't. The type 1 is solely genetic, and when they have, viral infections, it now makes, because the viral there's what we call, I don't want to use too much medical word, there's what we call antigenic mimicry. Now, if somebody has a genetic predisposition and now gets a viral infection, that the antigens are similar to the antigens in the B cell in the pancreas that produces insulin, then the antibodies this person produces to handle those viruses will affect the antigen of the B cell and destroy it.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Felicia Anuma. Let's bring in Haruna, who is a nurse, of course, the National Auditor of the National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives. At the beginning of this program, we had indicated that nurses play a vital role as caregivers to patients with diabetes. What exactly is the relationship between a nurse and a patient who is suffering from diabetes?
Thank you. The patient who is suffering from diabetes or diabetes mellitus, which is a very common one, and the nurse, like the Prof have explained, this is a patient having problem of metabolic disorder, of carbohydrate, is complaining of urination, complaining of that. All those are there. For a nurse, you see this patient beyond what he is complaining. Because these complaints, this manifestation, you view them, one, physically, psychologically, socially, and even the family involvement, and you also view it economically. So as a nurse, you know that you have a duty and responsibility to educate this patient, to really understand that this sickness you are having is not from witchcraft. This sickness you are having is not done to you by another person. Because if the patient impression is that somebody does it, all the grammar prof have said, that patient will not comply. Because to him, it is my neighbor who did it.
Your neighbor who said, we will see.
We will see. And coincidentally, you start having that. So the nurse now look at this patient beyond this illness. After you educate him, let him accept, let him understand that this sickness is diabetes and it is real and it is physiological or metabolic problems. It's a health problem. That is number one. Number two, naturally, if you ask Pastor Chidi, he will tell you the first time they told him, he was confused. He will be worried. Will this sickness kill me? This sickness, they say, is not curable. Am I going to survive it? What happens to my children? What happens to my family? What happens to my work? How can I cope? So as a nurse, you have a duty to allay the fears and anxiety of this patient, especially initially. And secondly, this patient will not remain with you in the hospital for long. He will go home. So you have a duty to teach him home care. All these tests he is saying, he's doing it by himself. And ordinarily, like if I ask you today, can you do this test? You don't know. So somebody have to teach you. So the nurse teach him, this is how you do it, this is how you do it, and he start practicing it, and you start monitoring, and you are satisfied that, yes, he can do this test correctly before he is discharged home. And then he maintains it. The economic factor. What is his level of economy? Is he a worker? If he's a worker, what is his take-home pay? Is he not a worker? He's in the community. Is he doing business? What type of business is he doing? Can he cope with buying this, buying that? Can he cope with this type of diet selection here and there? How is the family economic status? So as a nurse, you must be able to establish that so that this client or patient will now have necessary support. Sometimes you may even have to invite the family members. Discuss with them. This is what is happening with this guy, and it's manageable. It's not a death warrant. But you have a role to support him, just like she highlighted earlier, to support him with this, with that, with that. And then let him also be able to do other things. Let him know that he can live his near normal life. He can still do his normal walkings. Then there are a lot of precautions you need to take. How do you live your life? How do you maintain this condition without complicating it? Even the type of shoe you wear. If you wear tight shoes, it will now compress your toes. Before you realize, you end up with ulcers. Before you realize, you'll start taking up cutting your leg or cutting your, and that will worsen the situation. So the behavioral change system in this entire patient is the nurse who should highlight all these things to him early enough. In fact, as a man, let him be able to know that his desire for his wife will reduce. And let the wife know. So the nurse now have to discuss with him and discuss with the wife. If not, there will be broken home. But if you discuss this and he is aware that this desire for my wife is reducing, has correlation with my condition, and let the wife also know, so that both of them can manage this situation together. You see, these are all part of what the nurse should do. But if all this information are not given, we are looking at our drugs, looking at this, and then other social aspect is not taken care of.
But in any event, I mean, with age also comes reduction in a desire for intimacy. That's one point. But I just wanted to say, the ideal situation you have described is so alluring. And it's almost like a nurse to a patient. And it's an idyllic situation. But will this apply in a public hospital where you go and you see a queue of patients from morning to night, so the nurse will sit down and begin to tell you all of this one after the other? I'm just wondering, so in an ideal setting, fine, but considering the kind of interactions that we have in our public health spaces, private hospitals perhaps, yes, and of course, you know, you also have to bear the cost. So let's look at what happens in a public health setting, where you have a huge amalgam of patients with all kinds of ailments to be attended to.
Yes, it is true that we have serious shortage of human resource for health. Globally, we have over 9 million shortage of nurses. In Nigeria, we have super shortage. Even the little we have, they are leaving the country. As at October this year, just for 2020, about over 5,800 nurses have left the country. So definitely, we have serious shortage. Like the expectation is that if a nurse is managing a critical case, it should be 1:2. In emergency, 1:4. But just like you highlighted, you are now managing 1:50, 1:60. When there's one, now that's what we call triaging, prioritizing. All these gamuts of patients, they don't have similar problems. Definitely with the tightness of the situation, you have to prioritize the type of conditions. If they tell you, okay, this patient has been diagnosed with diabetes, or this patient has been diagnosed with HIV, let me put it, another one. So you know that these two cases, you must give them extra time. It's different from this one have come, I have malaria. 1, 2, you just talk. But when they say this is the first time they are diagnosing diabetes, you must create time for this patient. You must, that one, you don't have option. But if it is a patient that comes normal follow-up with the many cases, they are already used to the system. And that is why we've been highlighting. Many don't understand the implication of these shortages. When you say the number is not enough, the number is not enough, people don't understand. They feel, why are you behaving this way? We don't have money to employ. We don't have this, we don't have that. But honestly, sickness in diabetes, for the first time a client is diagnosed, every professional nurse knows that you must give that patient a time. Sometimes if the timing is so compacted that you are overwhelmed, give him another time. You can just see him, okay, sir, this is the situation, you've been diagnosed. What's the time now? 10 o'clock, we're a bit tight, but I would want to have a discussion with you. So what time is it okay for you? Before 4, for instance. You say, okay, I can make it 3 o'clock. By that 3, you know, the work is cleared. Then you give him that time. Subsequent follow-up, you don't need to give him longer time. And once a nurse misses that initial awareness and discussion, I assure you there will be a lot of problems. This patient will come, you discover that glucose management is becoming difficult. The doctor will be in trouble. What is the matter? Maybe this patient is not even complying. They are saying, take this diet, take this diet. They will even give an impression to the relative that they have eaten, and they have quietly put it in the dustbin. Even their drugs, they will give an impression that they are taking the drug, while they have not taken it. All because if there's a problem in the initial discussion. So we want to appeal that no matter, that initial time must be created at the first diagnosis. So as a nurse, you are very central. You have become a member by implication of the family of that person. You must relate with him, relate with the wife, relate with the children, relate with everybody, even the community, how they view it. Because it's possible in that community, they have their own interpretation of how that happens. They will tell you there's a witch in one river. Anytime you drink water from that river, that's why he's following this home. He's following them. They are bad people. The father had this, the mother have this. You see the children, they are all having this. So the view of the community matters a lot also. So sometimes enough, you even have to go to the level of discussion with the community leaders for the purpose of this individual family member. So as a nurse, you are relating to him as individual, you are relating to the entire family, you are relating to the entire community, you are relating to everybody surrounding him. Where is necessary, even his employers. If he is a worker and then he's having, he will tell you this is the difficulty he's having. Because of his frequency of this, is affecting his work, and then there's a lot of pressure. If it means reaching out to the chief executive of the place or his supervisor as his nurse and explain, this is what is happening to this person. This is his income. This is this. We will need support. Where necessary, please give him support. Most ministries have welfare system.
That is really caregiving there.
Exactly.
Haruna Mandatsu.
Yes.
Thank you so much for that insight. We'll come back to those issues, to these issues again.
Okay.
When we look at the number of nurses you have and the caregivers and even the medics generally, even the doctors.
Exactly.
Truly speaking, they are really not sufficient. Yes. And we'll look at how you're managing that and the public response to this psychological or counseling you're giving to the people. Now let's cross over to Dr. Goodness Chidi. Chidi Anyanwu, that is a community nutritionist, and she is the first and immediate past president of Nutrition Society of Nigeria, FCT chapter. Dr. Chidi, the pastor, the patient in the house, I'll keep referring to him as such, give us an indication that diet has been prescribed to him, and of course he has been following that. And that took him all through as part of the measures he has been taking for the past 20-something years now, managing diabetes. Could you shed more light for us on dieting in diabetes?
Thank you very much. The issue of dieting in diabetes is something that you can't really do without. Why do I say so? If you get your nutrition right, every other thing in your body will align, like the patient. I don't want to refer to him still as a patient. Food has different functions. You have, the pro-oxidants, you have the antioxidants, you have the ones that detoxify, you have the immune boosters, you have the ones that depress some carcinogens and other we call them depressants in the body. Now, if you have an understanding of these different kinds of foods, it will help you to manage diabetes very, very effectively. For instance, like he rightly said, looking at the diet plate, we don't talk about balanced diet these days, we talk about adequate nutrition. And emphasis has always been laid on the importance of vegetables. The reason is that vegetables are high fiber foods, even vegetables and fruits. And the fibers there, make for a slow release of this glucose into the bloodstream. And when you also have a good proportion of it, like if you're eating your carbohydrates or your protein with enough vegetables in it, it regulates what we call the glycemic index. That's the uploading of glucose into the bloodstream. And that helps your body to utilize the glucose at a very normal or slow rate. Because if the glycemic index of a food is so high, like that, is allowed to actually pump into the bloodstream, the glucose saturates the blood, and that becomes a problem for the patient. So consumption of, planning of diets is very, very important in management of diabetes. And you can link it up with what Prof said in terms of weight management. I used to tell some of my clients that why weight management in diabetes is very, very important is because when you are reducing your food intake, you are absolutely reducing every other thing. You know, you're reducing your sugar intake, you're reducing your salt intake, you're reducing your fat intake, and ordinarily, as you're losing this weight, everything that has gone out of alignment in your body begins to align. Your blood sugar begins to align, your blood pressure begins to align. And an understanding of this glycemic index again is very, like people say, Prof is here, she can tell us better, having a lot of clinical studies. When you have complex carbohydrates, like what patients find most difficult is management of monotonous diets. They get tired of a lot of measurements, they get tired of, regimented diets. But when you take a look into what is available what is readily available to these people, and availability, I mean locally available food materials. Civilization and development and the kind of work we do has really eroded our nutrition values, our food cultures. And what we have today is this diabetes that we are talking about. And we just have to take a study of what is available to this patient and ensure that he or she has access and a good understanding of these available foods. We have so many vegetables in Nigeria across geopolitical zones. The type you get in the north may not be exactly the type you get in the east, may not be the type you get in the west. And God has a reason for, doing all these things like this. And again, there are also fruits that appear in different seasons of the year.
Well, I was just wondering, Dr. Goodness, Ayan, you've been talking about different kinds of foods and categories and classification. Could you be more specific? Just name some of the foods that we eat or that will predispose in the individual to diabetes, or the kinds of food that a person who has diabetes should begin to avoid. This is for the benefit of our viewers. When you say vegetable, what kind of vegetable? When you say protein, what kind of protein should you avoid, or what kind of protein should you have? In the community sense, people will say, oh, this kind of diet or this kind of meal is peculiar to us. What are those things?
Okay, in terms of vegetables, we have in my own locality, we have ugu or pumpkin is something that is almost a general thing. We have the green, we have the lettuce, there's the parsley, there's a lot of them we get in that. There are the mints, in the north you have the zobo leaves, a lot of them. We have the oha in Igbo, we have the what do they call it? The green slurry vegetable from the Yoruba states. And these are vegetables that, they have soluble fiber. And they help in, take for instance, when you grind or cut okra, and you want to pass it through a sieve, the water will not leave. I just want to use this as an illustration. The water will not pass through that sieve easily because of the soluble fiber in the vegetable. And that is exactly what happens when you consume okra with that fiber in your body. It slows down or it reduces the absorption rate of the glucose, the uptake into the bloodstream. And again, talk about fruits. We have the high sugar fruits, which we don't advise diabetic patients to, depending on the level of the level of the diabetes. We don't really advise them to go on high sugar fruits. But if you must take such fruits, you must eat them with the bark, something like the mango. You don't have to throw away the peels of your mango. No, it is that peel or the bark of the mango is what actually helps in the slow absorption of the glucose or of the fructose in that particular fruit. And again, the proteins, we normally prescribe beans. Beans has a lot of isoflavones that also depress some of these, depress some diabetogenic substances in the body. And that is why, because the absorption of protein does not raise it doesn't have a high glycemic index. The digestion of protein is slow, and the sugar release is also slow. It can sustain a patient for quite a long time, you know. And again, it doesn't also have high energy.
Oh, well, sorry about that. There appears to be some disruption of our connection to Dr. Goodness. I just want to bring in Professor Felicia Enuma to further elaborate on the types of diet with specific names, the kinds of fruits that you should eat with some more cautions. You just mentioned only one, which is a mango. So take it along with the peel. What kind of other fruits are high in sugar, and how should they be eaten?
Okay, thank you very much. When we talk about diet in diabetes, there are certain things that are important. One very important issue is that we don't want people to consume things that contain what we call refined sugars. That's when you put any food in your mouth and it's tasting sweet immediately, it means it has refined sugars. These are sugars in their most easily absorbable form, like Coke. So, you know, when you take a bottle of Coke, the sugar runs directly into the blood to step up the blood sugar. So the absolute rule is that we don't want people taking things containing refined sugars. That's why we tell people don't take fizzy drinks, ice creams, chocolates, cakes, don't. But otherwise, this individual can eat any other thing, because the idea is we don't want to strip this individual from his natural food environment, from what the individual likes. Because if you do that, then you are making life miserable for this person. And you know, we have a saying in Nigeria that "I beg" is something that we give somebody one day, "I beg, let me enjoy my life." So we like to play around the food environment of this individual, what he likes. So apart from don't take refined sugars, this person can take any other thing. The only thing is, how much of rice is this person consuming and with what? That's why he said, my patient said, I drew a plate and I said, half of it should be vegetables of any type that you like, as long as it is called vegetable. Whatever it is that we name vegetable in our environment, that's fine.
But leafy vegetables.
Leafy vegetables, then carrots, cabbage, whatever it is, cucumber, whatever it is that we call vegetable, that we know the name is vegetable in Nigeria.
Half of the plate.
Half of the plate. Right. So anything called vegetable should be half of your plate. If it is...
As Nigerians will say, sorry to interject, do you get belly full when you eat only vegetables?
Oh, yes, you will.
No, I'm asking, Agada, do you get belly full? Because somebody will say, only vegetable.
Only
after a couple of hours, you know, you'll be hungry.
He's right. You don't really feel as full, but you're actually full, half, because you fill up on the vegetables. It's just that it goes off quite faster than if you fill up with a big bowl of pounded yam or something like that.
Well, you know why the question goes is that when you look at the situation, I remember some time ago, Kinsley, in Yola, you remember Dr. Tukur Arabi? Mm-hmm. Most likely in Yola. Mm-hmm. He has been in this diabetes thing for quite a long time, has been a patient too for over 40 years.
Okay.
I was having a program with him the other time, especially on this diabetes, and he said, taking too much of anything is too bad. Mm-hmm. Moderation is good. Mm-hmm. But when we talk about the dieting in diabetes, he said, just like the pastor said, not a big bowl of pounded yam. You can take a whole bag of orange, he says, without any problem, or any other vegetable, he says, than taking another big thing like yam or whatever.
Well, what I will say is this. Like I made a very important statement. We don't strip this individual from his food environment. For example, what we say is, if it is rice you want to take, let that rice, the medium-sized plate that we all know, let that rice occupy just a quarter of that plate, and then half is vegetable. Now, the reason why this individual is okay with, for example, my patients who love pounded yam, I don't stop them, but I show them the size of my feast. Okay. And then the rest, you can have a big bowl of vegetable soup to use that pounded yam, you know, to eat it. Now, the issue is vegetables, we call it bulk. You know, we call it roughage in local terms, but it contains fiber. The issue is it will fill you, it will fill the space. You're not going to get hungry, but at the end of the day, it slows the digestion rate and the amount of glucose you are going to absorb from that pounded yam. It slows it. That is why it's so important that, you know, so if the person wants to eat rice, beans, potato, whatever it is, no problem. But how much of it are you taking? And with what are you taking it? And that's, you know, where vegetable. And we have other sources of fiber. For example,
Professor Anuma, thanks a lot. I mean, Nadabu, I'm sure you have also experienced this, and our viewers probably are also most familiar with this. Oh, they say pounded yam because people have heard much more frequently now about the harm that it could cause to the body if taken frequently and excessively. So they now say, go and take wheat. You know, it's what swallow. You know, they will mention semo, they will mention all kinds of things, oat, and so on and so forth. What are the harms likely to arise from this? Because the wheat, you will see some products they will say wheat-free, gluten-free. What do those things mean for diabetes?
Well, there are people who have allergic reactions to some components in the wheat. There's a protein called gluten that is in the wheat. There are people, just like when we have allergy to dust, you know, we have allergy to cold, they have allergy. They have allergic reactions to that component. So such people, we don't advise them to take wheat because it can give them, you know, problems. But the issue is actually, it's not the name of the swallow that is important. It's not whether it's eba, whether it's wheat, whether it's pounded, or whatever. It is how much, whether it's two, is how much. It's so important, how much. Because if an individual, if I go to somewhere with someone and there is pounded yam and vegetable soup, and I say, I am going to take pounded yam and vegetable soup, but that person says, because of diabetes, I'm going to take beans. If the person takes too much beans, when you check our blood sugars 2 hours after, that person's blood sugar may be higher than my own.
Why?
Because of the amount of beans that he has taken. That's why quantity is very important. Quantity. So it is how much, and then with what are you combining it? That statement is very important that I want people to take home.
Okay. Sorry, not about. There's this other one. It may sound funny, but it's important to clarify because we have a broad range of viewers of Good Morning Nigeria and Nigerian Television Authority in general. There's a particular meal, I'm sure they call it 6 to 6. You take it 6 in the morning, it can last you up to 6 p.m. Akpu, does it have any role in diabetes?
Well, the dietitian mentioned something called glycemic index. Yeah. Well, it is a way we assess how fast and how high a particular food we have taken steps up our blood glucose. And we have GI for various foods. All right? So the GI of apple is quite high. So when you have foods that have very high GI, what I tell my patient, if you love it, very little. If the person is a Muslim, I say, okay, use it to celebrate Fridays. If the person is a Christian, I say, use it to celebrate your Sundays. So I don't remove the person completely, but I show a very small size and I say, okay, you can take it sparingly once in a while just for you to feel good.
The food thing is, inexhaustive. We'll keep talking about that for quite some time. In the course of this program, we've been able to join, or rather get across to us, Dr. Ogbuagu Osi Ogbu, that is, sorry about the name, the Chief Consultant Physician and Geriatrician, Department of Internal Medicine, National Hospital of Abuja. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, though you come in now. Hello, can you hear me there, Dr. Ogugwa?
Yes, I can.
Diabetes, which of course that is why you are here, and we're celebrating, we're trying to see how people understand much about diabetes and manage it if they do have it, or prevent it if they don't, or treat it if they are really facing it. We're talking about the risk factors. Initially, we discussed, a lot of factors which include dieting, our sedentary mode of life, especially in Nigeria and among the high class or high profile people. Could you please shed more light for us, therefore, on one of these risk factors, which is the sedentary life of Nigerians, especially high-profile people, or generally Nigerians anyway. Let me not just be so categorical because it affects almost everybody who has the chance to get some help from anybody else. Shed more light for us on this and then see how exercises in this regard can go a long way in trying to manage diabetes.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Nigeria. Yes, so sedentary lifestyle is one of those major risk factors for what we call lifestyle-related diseases, diabetes being one of them. There's a recommendation that every individual, at a minimum, should engage in quick-paced walks. 150 minutes for 150 minutes per week. And that translates to 30 minutes at the minimum 5 times a week. That's the minimum recommendation. If you can do double that, it's actually, you're better off than the person who does the minimum. There's also a recommendation that we should take 10,000 steps per day. So really, the way we can do this is whenever you find yourself in a sitting position, you're a CEO, you're a clerical staff, and you've been sitting for 2 hours, you really should get up from that chair, walk around for about 5 to 10 minutes, take a few steps, and you might be able to get in about 200 steps during that 10-minute break before you come back again. Sitting has been described as the new smoking. And, a lot of times when, I'm clerking clients in the clinic and I say, oh, Mama or Papa, do you smoke? And, the first reaction is, oh, God forbid. So when people hear that correlation, that sitting is the new smoking, that's really a catchy phrase that drives it home that, look, we really don't want people to sit. We want you to move, move, move. So yes, whatever your job description is, or even if you were a housewife, do not be the one that is sitting on that chair and asking someone else to do the errands. So go and bring me my cup of tea, go and bring me my cup of water. You are a director in an office, you need to get something from your file cabinet, get up from that chair and pick up your file from the file cabinet. You are going from one level of your office to the other, use the stairs and not the elevator. So we
Oh, shit. That's, looks like...
Well, it so seems as if we've lost Dr. Ogugwa there. We'll get back to her when the link gets established again. Haruna Mandabs, we've been talking about the patients you've been, handling, and your complaint has been inadequate number of your type, and of course medics generally, and the time you take in trying to counsel patients and advise them appropriately according to as to what they should be doing as diabetic patients. My question is in relation to how you do the counseling, especially looking at the factors like traditional factors that you mentioned earlier on, and then maybe religious factors, and some other factors that may hinder the understanding of the advices you are going to give. How is the response of the patients to these kind of, advices you give and the counseling you give?
Thank you very much. Usually, if you want to counsel a patient, you have to consider this patient in total. His belief system, A patient will tell you, by the time you tell him this is what has happened, this metabolic disorder is affecting glucose, but with time it will affect protein, it will affect fat, and this, but this is what you are expected to do. He will tell you, it's not my portion.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't consider that, you will miss out. And that would even put you off guard. Because he have told you that disease you are mentioning is not his portion. So we consider that. And then you must speak in the language that the patient understands. When I say language, not English per se, but in avoiding medical jargons. Because if you explain to this patient using a lot of medical jargons, he will not understand what you have said. Or you are explaining and you are putting these big terms, he won't understand. So compliance will be a problem. Two, sometimes you allow this patient even tell you initially, what does he think? Has he ever heard of it? What is his own understanding? Because these days, people Google frequent urination. He has Googled it. Increased desire to drink water. We call it polydipsia. He has Googled it. All these things, before he comes to you, don't term him as if you don't have information. But your own is to establish, based on the information he has, and see which one is wrong, and then correct it. But if you assume he doesn't know anything, you begin to give him, you will miss it. Next. Okay.
Sorry, there's a point you probably wanted to explain further. But tell us this. The management of diabetes doesn't look like a poor man's regime or a person who is financially handicapped. The test strips that Pastor and architect Agada was talking about, those test strips are expensive. So how can an individual engage in self-care or just self-management to say, look, on a daily basis or on a weekly basis or every 3 days, or if I feel woozy, I'm going to take my own test. How the person living in a rural area or a person who doesn't have access for regular or frequent consulting at the hospital?
Yes, you see, that is why where the patient stays is vital. What the patient does to earn a living is vital. So when you are giving counseling or information to this patient, all those have to be considered. You know, in those days, they would say diabetes is a disease of the rich. That was the impression before. The general, the poor man feel is not his own. But today, we are all agree that the rate is so high. So when you have known the economic status of this patient, you now compare to him. If you are to take this, buy this, take this one, this is the cost. But if you are to comply with your dietary regimen, which is, so at the end, he will see the one that he can easily comply. You know, he can easily comply. And let me tell you, it will reach a point where the patient himself, without doing the test, he will know that my blood sugar is high. He will know it.
Yeah, that's what Pastor was saying.
He will know
you
it.
Understand your body signs.
Yes, and you have already now told him, by the time you observe this, you start having this, then you now know that your sugar is high, and this is what you are to do. By the time you observe this, maybe sweating, and you know that your sugar is low. This is what you do. And in case you are traveling, this is what you should always carry along with you. So you discover that to some extent, he or she is able to manage within his economic capability and is able to avoid some of these tests frequently. Many of them don't even have, then you do advocacy. You do advocacy to the rich on their behalf. This man is in your hospital, is in your community. He has diabetes type 2. Maybe he has to be on insulin injection. for instance, daily, and he can't afford. We do advocacy for others to help. Because in our community system, we help. People go to farm together. So this is the time to also help. So because if he must have it, then you as a nurse must find a way of raising support to that client.
Yeah, and I try to help will also mean busting some of those myths. Because let's take an example in the rural areas, a man or a woman has a sore somewhere around the ankle and the sore never heals for a long time. The next thing you'll be hearing is, that's wicho. You know, that's what they use to prepare stew when they go to Kofu. How do you deal with such?
Yes. So what you will do first is you highlight the myth, all the myths about diabetes. Right. It is this, it is that, it is that. Let people know that they are all myth and misconception. But this is what it is. And to help this patient is to avoid his susceptibility to injury. His susceptibility, what will cause injury to him? Is it cutting of nails? You put your leg, a nail cutter, you know, all those things. Because if he has injury, why is it not healing? Because glucose is not being utilized adequately. Protein that ordinarily supposed to build up his immune system, repair worn out tissue, at a stage will be diverted to produce heat and energy. And so the function of protein is now what? Deranged. That is why he has wound. Even if the wound is not infected, he will still have delay in healing. So, in fact, once you have that, that's why as a nurse, you are not dealing with this patient, his families, his community. The information you have given this patient, his family members have to get that information. To a large extent, the community members should have to get some of this information. Why? Because you are not dealing with one person. So, but if they don't have the information, definitely they will build their own information or the one they have inherited. Okay. But if they have the information early enough, definitely it will erase some of this myth and misconception. But that's principally, good. As a nurse, if you are dealing with a diabetic patient, just know that you are almost everything to this patient. You are his lawyer, you are his doctor by implication, you are his nutritionist, you are his lab scientist, you are everything. That makes the nurse very central.
You can eliminate the lawyer aspect.
No,
so that you won't go in for impersonation.
Yeah. No,
unless you have been called to the bar.
On his behalf. You do a lot of advocacy on his behalf.
That makes your whole, your table very much full.
Exactly.
Very much full indeed. And that's why you need more hands there.
Exactly.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We shall now take a quick break. We shall be back with more on this program. We're talking about managing diabetes. Stay with us.
The counsel of our fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
My name is Nando Jamda
Muhammad.
Stevita
Hussein Musa. Roduna Joel Finji. Said Musa. John.
I'm a carpenter. I've been doing this for more than 8 years now.
And I said that plantain. Na kai kimamin shekara uku.
I've been selling my tomatoes for about 10 years now, and I do it for a better Nigeria.
Ina
wannan sana'ar lemu ne domin Najeriya ta ci gaba. Ina sa domin Najeriya ta kyau.
And you can see we are doing our small little work to make Nigeria great.
As you can see, I'm a technician and I'm doing it to help myself and to help my generation.
Ina zaune ne a Plateau na business. Kuma ina yin wannan domin ci gaban ƙasar Najeriya.
For a better Nigeria. This message is from the National Orientation Agency. Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile
provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
All right, well, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, and we are live on NTA's network service. Let's bring in again Dr. Ogugwa Osiogbo into the conversation. Dr. Osiogbo, well, architect Peter Agada here was telling us some of the experiences he had that then, of course, led him to seek professional advice, frequent urination, more intake of water, and all that. How do you balance this with at least two popular pieces of advice that we get to hear these days? That one, to prevent kidney stones, you have to take adequate amounts of water. And then you are told also avoid taking water too late in the night, otherwise you'll be getting up frequently to urinate. But sometimes not everybody can adhere to the prescription of not taking water too late in the night. So how, if a person takes an adequate amount of water, I think it's about 3 liters per day minimum, if you take water, of course, you'll be going to urinate. So how then do you distinguish that from an individual who probably already has the onset of diabetes type 2?
Thank you. So what it is even that individual who's always taking 2 or 3 liters of fluid would have a certain pattern for their for passing urine, and that pattern would change. So if you would usually only wake up twice during the night, and you now start waking up 4 or more times during the night, that's a change in that pattern, and that should alert the individual to think something else might be going on. For older adults who are typically my patients, they, even while they're taking adequate amount of liquid, might be having excessive urination, particularly at nighttime, if they have enlarged prostate issues. So it's when you do present yourself for medical care, it's up to the clinician to be able to decipher, does this have to do with diabetes or does it have to do with an enlarged prostate situation? And sometimes too, it could actually just be that you have an infection in the bladder that is irritating the bladder, and you find yourself going to the toilet more frequently than usual. So really, when one has such symptoms, we should be able to decipher, is it really from the high blood sugar? Is it from a prostate enlargement? Is it from an infection in the urine? And the different tests that you can do to be able to differentiate all of that.
Well, Dr. Ogugwa, looking at this last statement you made, prostate and diabetes, there is a correlation there. Can you shed more light? Because some prostate patients may feel guilty of this, same as the diabetic patients too. Now, throw more light on this urination thing and the correlation between these two briefly.
Right, so diabetes is a lifestyle-related disease. Increase in age is a big risk factor for diabetes. So you would find a good percentage of older adults having diabetes, and the same group of people, the males now, having enlarged prostate issues. So you can actually have the coexistence of those two conditions in the same older adult, a male of say 60, 65, who might have had diabetes, has actually been managing from the age of 45 or 50, and then the prostate is also enlarged. So there would be certain differences. For the prostatic enlargement, they tend to have incomplete emptying. So he goes to empty the bladder, and the flow of the urine is not smooth. You find that there's some dribbling, which typically would not happen when it's just diabetes that has contributed to your excessive urination. So that's one way of differentiating that. And the other thing that I mentioned was for For those with prostate, you actually might find much more nighttime awakenings because of the enlarged prostate not being able to contain adequate urine in the bladder before the urge to go and pass urine. So you could find this existing in the same individual. But the typical thing with the prostatic enlargement is that their flow of urine is often disrupted. They go and they have to stay, stand there by the toilet for a long period of time before they can actually get a feeling of completeness. And often the bladder is not fully emptied, and soon after they are having to go back again.
Okay, Dr. Ogugwa, just before we let you go, tell us something about the management of diabetes in geriatric patients. Will it be the same regimen you would have for a younger person who has diabetes and is being managed, and an older person, say from 60, 65, as you indicated?
Right, so diabetes management really, at whatever age, is individualized. So you have to put into context everything else that's happening to the individual patient. So we're not looking at just the figures, or your blood sugar is 11 or it's 8 or it's 4. So we look at everything else that is happening to that patient. And this is particularly important in older adults because of the risk of multimorbidity, the risk of frailty, the risk of falls. So we're very particular about not over controlling. So we're not looking for intense glycemic control in those older adults, particularly the very frail. So we do relax some of the targets for blood sugar targets in those in the population of frail older adults, where we're looking at a HbA1c of between 6 to 7% in younger people. In frail older adults, 7.5 to 8 might be acceptable, just because we do not want them developing hypoglycemia, which increases their risk for falls. And of course, if they fall and break the hip, or even have injury to the, bleeding into the brain, that gives us much worse outcomes. So we're not looking to intensely control blood sugar in older adults. We really just want to manage them in a state that still keeps them functional and reduces the risk for poor outcomes, such as falls and hypoglycemia.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Ogugwa Osi-Ogbo, Chief Consultant Physician and Geriatrician in Department of Internal Medicine at the National Hospital in Abuja. We appreciate your insight into our conversation this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, let's return to our studios. The question is going to both Professor Felicia Anuma and Peter Agada. I have seen a diabetic patient who has supposed to take a daily shot of insulin, and that can be quite a challenge. But what is your experience, Peter? Do you have to have a daily shot of insulin, or is diet and then your exercise regime, and what happens, and how frequently do you take your blood sugar level, whether fasting or otherwise?
All right, thank you so much. Like I said, the key thing about the management of diabetes for me is striving to understand my body signs. Very, very critical. Very, very critical. Like somebody mentioned, it's not easy to pay $6,500 to buy 50 test strips and burn it off within 2-3 weeks. So what I do is, like my doctor counseled me, you don't have to test every day. You know, if you're coming to see me, say 4 days before you come or 5 days, check and put it down. And then when you come, we follow it, and then we know the trend. Now, outside those days, I do my testing sporadically. One day, maybe another 1 week, or maybe another 4 days, or something like that. I depend more on my signs. I don't play with my exercise regimes. I don't play with my diet regimes. I don't eat anyhow. Like you said, even though you want to reward yourself sometimes on a birthday with a little cake, I don't do too much of that. I am now getting used to dieting. Sometimes it's frustrating that you're eating a particular quantity, like you want to fill up, you want to eat well, but you just have to count the carb, And right now, I'm beginning to get used to it. I don't need to fill up anymore. So I eat, I enjoy my food. I recently started to do a kind of injection, okay, recently. I do it once at night. It's pretty comfortable. In fact, that was one of the things I was scared of at the beginning. When I saw that pen, I was like, Jesus, this is for me? I saw a pen and people wish, oh my goodness. But they've so modified these things, the prick you don't even know when you have taken the shot. You don't know when you have taken a shot. The pin is almost invincible. And it has really, really helped my management. It brought me, like she said, HbA1c of about 6.5. I've never had such powerful results, in my 22 years of management like I have now in the last 6 months. So I do that for now. I talk to my doctor after my test. If I notice it's getting too low, I'll say, I'm seeing figures less than 90. And she will say, okay, step it down. Okay, step it down so they don't run into hypoglycemia. So that is how it is. It's a management thing. You have to live that way. It's like understanding the science of your body. You have to live that way all through the rest of your life. There's no going back to it. People have tried to recommend traditional medicine, agbo. Some people say there's one agbo. You buy it from Abeokuta or somewhere. You put it in a cup and drink it. I have never tried it.
And you also hear of moringa. They say moringa moringa you go now. Moringa
I did moringa on my own. Somebody planted it behind my house. I took it once or twice, and I will get that dizzy. I stopped.
Well, that's real good.
Yes, I stopped. I really stopped.
That's real good.
Once my body sign is telling me you're okay, normally it synchronizes with the test machines. It synchronizes. 95% of the time, what my body sign is saying and what my testing is saying are the same thing. So I stay with my test, I stay with my medication, I stay with my exercises, and I stay with my diet. Even when I'm off station, and I can't have access sometimes to some of this. Like when I went to the US, I worked basically with my body signs, and I was fine throughout.
Oh, that's great, Architect Peter. Oh, that's a good one. Don't get too much dizzy anyway. Dr. Goodness, Chidi, we seem to look at diabetes as, a common disease that people care less much about because most people do not even think that they do have it because they care less about it. And according to the World Health Organization, when we look at what is ongoing as per diseases, it's COVID-19. And according to the World Health Organization, 1 out of every 5 COVID deaths, right, in Africa is linked to diabetes. And of course, about 18.3% of COVID deaths in Africa are people with that diabetes. Now, there seems to be a disruption, therefore, on managing and treating diabetes from COVID-19. What advice would you give, especially to those managing diabetes in these COVID days?
Okay, the truth is that the COVID-19 also is leaving us with a problem at hand because COVID-19 increased the sedentary lifestyle of people. Activities are reduced, virtual meetings, a lot of people are being conservative with movement and physical activities. And this is a society where already some people are normally, their normal jobs keep them sedentary. And now the COVID also made it more sedentary. Well, in situations like this, it's important to keep emphasizing diet. I think from experience and from what we have done so far, there has to be a stepping up of consumption of fruits and vegetables because increasing caloric intake in sedentary lifestyle is a problem already, not to talk of when the person is sick. So in management of people with COVID-19 or even normal people in this particular period, a lot of awareness has to be created. You have to actually create time to exercise. Even if it is indoors, you must ensure that the 150 minutes per week, the 30 minutes per day, even if it means breaking it into 10 minutes, ensure that you don't keep yourself at a spot. Improve your physical activities and then improve on your diet, especially the consumption of fruits and vegetables, because this is going to actually boost your immune system and help you in fighting some of the symptoms that may come along with COVID and other diseases or conditions that may come with them. So that is just the advice, because honestly, the major problem we have in our society today is the level of processing our foods undergo, and that is where the awareness for this diabetes should actually, intensify, because nutrition transition has occurred so much that people eat something, they don't even know the basics, they don't even know what the food they are eating is made from. And that has become, all the extrusions, all the explosions that go on in the food industry has a kind of removed, made the foods more refined, like our prof said, and it shoots up the uptake of glucose in the blood system.
I was just wondering, Dr. Goodnight, you'll be talking about fruits and fruits. Previously on Good Morning Nigeria, we had discussed this, and there was a nutritionist who advised about fruit intake. Some would say, take your fruits before a meal. Others would say, take your fruits after a meal. And some persons would tell you that they are hooked on what they call smoothies, which is a cocktail of fruits. What's your thought on this?
Well, as a professional, we grew up with, or we were taught, the desserts, the appetizers, they are good. But when you look at your environment, for me, I take my fruits anytime I want to. And my clients have thrived very well on that. Regimentation of these diets make people tired of following them. And because we want to help them out, you have to also make it in a way that is exciting. Be practical about it. Eat your fruits anytime. If you're fine taking your orange juice, like personally, maybe somebody wants to have a glass of orange juice before a meal, possibly because the person wants to control the portion of the food. You eat your orange before, your meal. Or you want to, after having your meal, you eat your orange. It's fine. If it's okay for you, it's good.
Okay, Dr. Goodness, just one point. I want to know, as you said, individual experiences matter. Professor Anuma, we're getting pressed for time now. Balance, we are told, is the stuff of life. So when there's high blood sugar level, persistently, that's diabetes. What happens when there's low blood sugar level? And I've also heard it said, and I've had this personal experience occasionally. Sometimes you feel a bit weak or so, and you just take a sip of one of these fizzy or sugary drinks, just a sip of it, and then after a while you stabilize. So what to do in those circumstances when there is a dip in your blood sugar level? If it is persistent, what does it mean? And what role do some of these fizzy drinks, just a sip of it, not a bottle anyway?
Okay. And briefly, maybe in some 30 seconds or any short of time. Really.
Okay, yeah. So low blood sugar can occur commonly in people who have diabetes, particularly if they've taken drugs and they have not eaten adequately, to take care of the level of the amount of medication they've taken. So they can have low blood sugars. And what we tell them when we educate them is that they have to have something in their bag. These days, everybody goes around, both males and females, with a bag. So they have to have something. They're either glucose tablets, we have glucose tablets, or few cubes of sugar, or some sweets. not tom-tom, you know, in their bag, so that once they have that feeling, you know, particularly when the brain is complaining, blood sugar is low, the feeling of dizziness, not losing interest in what you are doing and so on, then you know that something is happening, you take that. But okay. I please want to mention something before we close. Now, the issue of diabetes treatment is very expensive. So what we want to encourage is the National Health Insurance Scheme has to go to work. Community health insurance has to be encouraged, because no single individual in our setting can take care of diabetes on his or her own. And then the issue of diabetes, World Diabetes Day is on the 14th, on Saturday. And the theme is the nurse and the diabetes. Yeah. The problem we have in Nigeria is that we don't have nurses trained as diabetes educators. So we need policymakers to prioritize diabetes and fund programs that will make us have diabetes educators.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Thanks, Felicia Numa. Thank you so much for being part of this program. Architect, it's our pleasure. Haruna, well, thank you so much. It's our pleasure. That's Good Morning Nigeria for you today. And I'm Yusuf Nadabo. So see you on Monday.
All right, do have a lovely weekend. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.